Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. This time we're heading over to Del Mar, California,
Oh yeah, Del Mar.
where
Beautiful Del Mar.
it seems like a pretty straightforward train realignment project has just like
Uh-huh.
kind of stirred up
Yeah.
all this stuff with local
Yeah.
politics and affordable housing.
It's fascinating. It's a case study in how, like,
Yeah,
all these seemingly unrelated things can get
right.
all tangled together,
Totally.
and the consequences ripple outward.
So the sources that we have for this deep dive are we've got a series of emails
Okay.
that are discussing this upcoming Del Mar Fairgrounds board meeting.
Uh-huh.
And then we also have a value analysis report from Sandag,
Right.
which is the San Diego Association of Government.
Right, right.
So the goal today is to kind of untangle this web of, competing interests and try to figure out what's at stake here.
So the situation's tricky because the Del Mar Fairgrounds Board, they initially agreed to provide some land for affordable housing,
Okay.
but now they're saying they're going to back out.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why,
Yeah, why?
they don't like Del Mar's stance on the train realignment.
Oh, so they're like, we'll give you this, but you gotta
Exactly.
play ball.
Yeah. And Del Mar needs that land. They're under a state mandate to build a certain amount of affordable housing.
Oh, I see.
If they don't get it, they're going to be forced to build like high-density housing on the lofts,
Right.
which would really change the character of the city.
Wow.
So it's,
kind of like a damned if you do.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
If they oppose the fairgrounds on this train route, they lose the housing agreement.
Right.
But if they go along with it, they could end up with a route that just doesn't work.
Okay, so let's try to understand the fairgrounds perspective a little better.
Sure.
It seems like from the emails, they're really concerned about money.
Absolutely. Their main revenue comes from events like the Del Mar races and the county fair.
Oh, right.
They're really afraid that if the train realignment goes through their property, it's going to disrupt all of that.
It's interesting, though, because Del Mar itself benefits financially from all those events at the fairgrounds.
Right, they get a lot of sales tax revenue.
I see.
So it's this weird...
Interdependence?
Yeah, Del Mar needs the fairgrounds to do well, but
right.
they also need to protect themselves. It's tricky.
And it's not just about the money, is it?
No.
It looks like the fairgrounds have this master plan that includes a special events rail platform.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, is that a part of this?
Yeah, they see that platform as essential for handling all the traffic and parking during their big events. And they're really anxious about any delays, especially with the bridge construction.
You mentioned that the fairgrounds had a fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in this case?
Basically, the Fairgrounds Board, they are legally obligated to put the fairgrounds first,
Right.
even if it's not what Del Mar wants.
Right.
So that duty actually kind of prevents them from compromising too much or,
Oh, I see.
putting the needs of the community ahead of money.
So even though they agreed to provide the land for affordable housing,
Right.
it sounds like it's not really their top priority,
It's not.
and they're not planning on
No.
contributing any money to the project?
Nope. They're playing hardball. They're saying if you want our land for your housing, you have to support our train route.
So it sounds like the fairgrounds are kind of holding the affordable housing agreement hostage
They are.
to get what they want.
Pretty much.
Okay, let's switch gears for a second and look at Sandag's value analysis report.
Okay.
They explore some different options for realigning the train. Alignment 14 is the one that keeps popping up.
Yeah, that one's interesting. Alignment 14 would tunnel the tracks under the lagoon
Okay.
all the way to I-5.
Oh, wow.
This could open up some new space, maybe even get rid of that bridge over the river. It'd definitely be more eco-friendly.
I mean, does it still include that special events platform?
It does, but it would be underground.
Okay.
There are some downsides, though.
Like what?
Construction on the fairground's western parking lot would be pretty disruptive.
Oh, right.
And then there's the whole eminent domain issue.
Eminent domain. Can you explain what that is and why people are so worried about it?
Basically, it's the government's right to take private property for public use.
Even if they don't want to sell.
Yeah, even if the owner objects.
Wow.
It's controversial, and it's definitely got people in Del Mar on edge. They're worried they'll lose their homes and businesses to make way for these tracks.
Yeah, you can see that concern
Oh, yeah.
in the emails. It seems like people really don't trust Sandag, and they feel like Del Mar's being asked to sacrifice for a project that benefits the whole region.
Exactly. And remember, the report is just Sandag's perspective.
Right.
We need to hear from the people in Del Mar, the other people who are impacted.
So we have the fairgrounds trying to force their train route by holding affordable housing hostage.
Right?
Sandag's pushing for a realignment that could displace people.
Yeah.
And Del Mar's stuck in the middle. I mean,
It's a mess.
where do we even go from here?
Well, before we start talking solutions,
Okay.
we need to look at the assumptions behind this whole project.
Like what?
Like, is the train even worth it?
You mean financially?
Exactly. The emails say ridership is low and it's expensive to operate. If it's not really working now, why spend billions to move it?
That's a good point.
And they're basing all this on huge population growth projections. But
yeah,
what if those are wrong? What if the population stays the same or even goes down?
So we could be making these big decisions based on bad information.
It's possible.
This makes me wonder if there are other motives behind all of this.
Like what?
I don't know, like who stands to gain financially from all this?
Good question. You've got construction companies who would get the contracts, developers who might see property values go up, and of course the railroad companies. Plus, politicians, they love these big projects. They bring in federal dollars, even if it's not the best thing for the community.
So maybe instead of getting bogged down in this train debate, we should be looking at other solutions.
Exactly.
Things that could help more people.
There was that idea of a rail-to-trail project.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Instead of moving the tracks, we could use that space for a park or something.
A lot of cities are doing that, and it's working out really well.
It could be a great way to create some green space and give people a place to walk and bike. It would probably be a lot cheaper than moving the train.
Yeah, and better for the environment.
So we've got all these reasons to be skeptical of this train project, but
Right.
What about the affordable housing issue?
Right, we can't forget about that. This all started because the fairground are using it as a bargaining chip.
So what can Del Mar do?
They could try to negotiate, but they might have to give in on the train route.
And that could hurt the community in the long run.
Exactly. Or they could look for other places to build housing, but land in Del Mar is expensive and scarce. They could also take the fairgrounds to court, but that could take years, and there's no guarantee they'd win.
Sounds like they're in a tough spot.
Yeah. This whole situation shows how much power the fairgrounds have and how little power Del Mar has.
So what can people do? How can we help Del Mar?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll talk about in our next segment.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll discuss how you can get involved in this issue.
All right, so we're back
in Del Mar.
Talking about Del Mar and all this craziness with the fairgrounds
Yeah.
and the train realignment. Before we
Yeah.
got kind of sidetracked talking about rail to trail, you were saying we need to look at some of the assumptions behind moving the train. Exactly. Like they're saying that moving the train is necessary for economic growth, right?
Right.
But is it really?
Well, in the emails, they mentioned that the Del Mar line has pretty low ridership, and the operating costs are super high.
Right.
So if it's not really serving that many people,
Right.
and it costs a ton to run, why spend billions of dollars to move it?
I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the train itself either.
Yeah, okay.
The report is basing all this on these huge projections for population growth.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying we're going to need way more rail capacity.
What if they're wrong, though?
Exactly, and there's reason to think they might be. The emails mentioned some data from the California Department of Finance that suggested Southern California's population could actually stay the same.
Wow.
Or even shrink in the next few decades.
So we could be spending all this money based on bad information.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how objective this whole decision-making process is.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like there might be other reasons for wanting to move the train.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should be following the money here.
Maybe we would.
Who actually benefits financially from this whole project?
Yeah, well, with these big infrastructure projects, there are always lots of players.
Right.
You've got the construction companies, right? They get the contracts, developers who might see property values increase along the new line, and then, obviously, the railroad companies themselves.
Right, right.
Plus, for politicians,
Oh, yeah.
these big projects are a great way to bring federal money into their districts.
I see.
It makes them look good.
Right.
Even if the project isn't really the best use of taxpayer money,
I see.
it's all about headlines and re-election.
It's all about politics.
A lot of times, yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like
Yeah.
we've got this train project that might not even make sense financially. The population growth that they're basing it on could be wrong.
Right.
And there could be all
That's
this
easy.
behind-the-scenes financial stuff and political motivations.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
And it shows how important it is to think critically about all this.
Absolutely.
To just take what they tell you at face value,
Yeah.
we have to ask questions. Demand transparency for our leaders.
Okay, so we've established that there are a lot of reasons to be skeptical of this train project.
Yeah,
But what about those other solutions, like the rail-to-trail idea?
that's a good one.
It seems like it has a lot of potential.
It does. And there are tons of successful examples all over the country.
Really? Like what?
Well, there's the High Line in New York City.
Okay.
It's a park built on an old elevated freight rail line.
I've heard of that.
It's super popular.
Yeah.
And it's really helped revitalize the whole neighborhood.
Are there any examples out west?
Yeah, in Seattle, there's the Burt-Gilman Trail.
Okay.
It's like 27 miles long.
Wow.
It follows an old railroad line, and people use it for walking, biking, running.
That's awesome.
It's a great example of how these projects can be more than just parks.
Yeah.
They can actually be important for transportation.
Right, connecting different parts of the city.
Exactly. And they can increase property values, too.
It makes sense.
And from an environmental perspective,
Yeah.
they're way better than a huge rail project.
Right.
You're preserving open space, reducing traffic, encouraging people to get outside.
So we could be spending billions on this train.
Right.
But instead, we could invest in a rail-to-trail.
Exactly.
That would benefit the whole community.
The community, the environment.
Yeah.
It's about thinking differently, you know. Are we really considering all the options?
Or are we just doing what's easiest?
Or what benefits the people in power?
Right, right. It all comes back to questioning what we're told and thinking for ourselves.
It does.
So we've talked about the train, we've talked about rail-to-trail,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't forget about Del Mar needing affordable housing.
Yeah, that's the heart of the issue, isn't it?
This whole thing started because the fairgrounds are using that as leverage.
Exactly.
So what can Del Mar even do at this point?
Well, they could try negotiating with the fairgrounds,
Okay.
but they'd probably have to make concessions on that train alignment.
Which could backfire later.
Right, it's risky. Or they could try to find other land for housing, but
Right.
land is scarce and expensive in Del Mar.
Yeah.
There's always the option of suing the fairgrounds.
But that's a long shot.
It would take forever, and it's not a sure thing.
So they're stuck.
Pretty much, it shows how much power the fairgrounds have compared to Del Mar.
Right.
They're really in a tough spot.
So what can people do? If we want to help Del Mar, what can we do?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something we'll talk about in our last segment.
All right, we're back.
Back for the final
For the final part.
of our Del Mar deep dive.
Our Del Mar deep dive. This has been quite a journey.
It has.
It feels like
Yeah.
we've uncovered a lot of layers to this story.
It's not just train tracks and affordable housing.
No.
This is about power, you know?
Right.
Who has it, who doesn't, competing interests, the future of a whole community.
Yeah, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed by how complicated it all is. But I want to focus on something positive now.
Okay.
Like, what can we actually do about all this?
I like that.
What could we do?
Because, yeah, it can feel like it's all out of our hands.
Totally.
But public pressure can really make a difference.
So where do we start?
Well, first, just stay informed.
Okay.
Keep up with the news. Go to those public meetings. Really get to know what both sides are saying.
I mean, these emails we've been reading have been super helpful
They really have.
in understanding all the different perspectives.
They show you what's really motivating people.
Exactly.
It's important to get information from lots of different sources.
Right.
Don't just listen to Sandag or the fairgrounds. Read the local news. Look at community forums. Talk to people.
Talk to your neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's staying informed.
Yeah.
But what about actually doing something?
So once you've got a handle on what's going on,
Right.
don't be afraid to speak up.
Okay.
Write letters to the editor.
Mm-hmm.
Call your elected officials.
Okay.
Go to those public hearings and tell them what you think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It can feel intimidating to
Totally.
speak up at a meeting,
Yeah.
but that's one of the best ways to get your concerns heard.
And, I mean, don't be afraid to
Yeah.
join forces with other people.
Exactly.
Right.
Organize with your neighbors. Join those community groups.
Mhm.
That's how you make your voice louder.
It's like that saying, there's strength in numbers.
Exactly.
Okay, so we can organize, we can make a difference.
We can.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
this affects all of us.
It does.
So it's our responsibility
Yeah.
to make sure our leaders are doing the right thing
Absolutely.
and to keep pushing for those alternative solutions.
Yes. Like rail to trail.
Yeah, rail to trail.
Such a creative idea.
Yeah.
It shows that there are other ways to do things. We just have to be open to them.
Maybe by getting people talking, building support, we can actually change things.
We can shift the conversation.
Yeah,
Push for a solution that really works for everyone.
that's what we need.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's a great place to wrap things up.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much for taking the time to walk us through all this.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
The Fairgrounds Board meeting is coming up. Things could change quickly.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay engaged.
Keep asking those tough questions.
The future of Del Mar is at stake.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep learning,
Keep exploring.
keep exploring, and keep diving deep.